The wedding ring made a soft plink as it hit the bottom of the champagne flute, sending bubbles fizzing around the gold band like tiny fireworks, celebrating my freedom. "What the hell are you doing, Jack?" Clara hissed through her perfect smile, the one she reserved for gallery openings and charity galas, the one that never reached her eyes anymore. I shrugged, watching our ring sink deeper into the expensive Dom Perrin around us. Brookfield's elite continued their polite chatter, but I could feel the ripple of attention spreading outward like blood in water. Mrs. Henderson from the Historical Society had actually stopped mid-sentence to stare. Perfect. Making a statement I said loud enough for the nearest donors to hear about availability. Clara's face went white beneath her carefully applied makeup. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready for this fundraiser, picking out the black dress that hugged her curves just right. The one Derek Sloan had complimented last month when he thought I wasn't listening. "You're embarrassing yourself," she whispered, but her voice shook slightly. Good. Let her feel what I'd been feeling for months. Am I? I glanced around the Brookfield Art Gallery's main exhibition hall, taking in the faces of people who'd known us for 15 years. Or am I finally being honest? The gallery looked stunning tonight. I had to admit Clara had outdone herself with the lighting, the way it played across the paintings and sculptures she'd carefully curated. She was brilliant at her job. I'd never denied that. It was everything else about our marriage that had gone to hell. "Jack, please." Her hand touched my arm, fingers cold, even through my jacket. "We can talk about this at home." "Can we?" I picked up the champagne flute ring still resting at the bottom like a golden accusation. "Because lately you're never home. Always working late, always having important meetings with important people like Derek Sloan, who stood across the room in his perfectly tailored suit pretending to study a watercolor while obviously watching our little drama unfold. Derek with his lakeside mansion and his philanthropic tax write-offs and his wandering hands that had been finding their way to my wife's waist with increasing frequency. "You're being paranoid," Clara said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Am I?" I drained the champagne in one gulp, feeling the ring clink against my teeth. Then I set the empty glass on the nearest table and walked away, leaving Clara standing there with her mouth slightly open and her carefully constructed evening in ruins. The October air hit me like a slap as I pushed through the gallery's front doors. Brookfield looked different at night, all shadows and amber streetlights. The kind of small Maine town where everyone knew everyone else's business or thought they did. My phone buzzed. A text from Ed Morrison, my only real friend left in this godforsaken place. "Saw the news. You okay?" News traveled fast in Brookfield. I typed back, "Never better." Another buzz. This one from Clara. "Come home. We need to talk." I deleted it without responding and started walking toward my truck. Behind me, I could hear the murmur of voices growing louder, more excited. By tomorrow morning, everyone in town would know that Jack Travers had lost his mind at the charity gala. They'd whisper about it over coffee at Murphy's Diner and debate the details at the hardware store. What they wouldn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I'd been planning this moment for weeks. Ever since I'd found Clara's second phone hidden in her purse like a dirty secret. Ever since I'd realized that my wife of 15 years had been playing me for a fool. The truck's engine turned over with a reluctant growl. As I pulled out of the gallery's parking lot, I caught a glimpse of Clara through the window, surrounded by concerned friends and curious strangers. She looked small and vulnerable under the harsh gallery lights. Nothing like the confident woman who'd been slowly destroying our marriage. For just a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The house felt different when I got home, like a crime scene waiting to be discovered. I'd lived here for 8 years, ever since Clara's gallery job had finally started paying enough for us to afford something bigger than our cramped apartment downtown. It was a good house, solid construction, big kitchen, workshop in the basement where I could lose myself in woodworking projects when the writing wasn't going well. Which was most of the time, if I was being honest. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat down at the kitchen table, staring at Clara's second phone. She'd been careless yesterday morning, rushing off to some emergency at the gallery, leaving her purse open on the counter. The phone had been tucked into a side pocket, turned off but still warm. It had taken me exactly 30 seconds to crack her password. Our wedding anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. The messages told a story I'd been too blind or too stupid to see. 3 months of texts between Clara and Derek, starting professional and gradually becoming personal, then intimate, then explicit. Marina Walsh, Clara's assistant and supposed best friend, had been their go-between, arranging meetings and providing alibis. Derek can't stop thinking about last night. Clara. Jack suspects nothing. He's too busy feeling sorry for himself. Marina coast is clear. Thursday. Jack has that furniture delivery in Portland. Clara. Perfect. Your place or mine? Derek. Mine. I want you in my bed this time. I took another sip of bourbon, feeling it burn down my throat. The worst part wasn't the cheating, though. That hurt like hell. The worst part was how stupid they thought I was. How easily they assumed I'd never figure it out. The front door opened around midnight. Clara's heels clicked across the hardwood floor, each step deliberate and careful. She was probably trying to gauge my mood, figure out how much damage control she'd need to do. Jack. Her voice echoed from the living room. Are you home? I didn't answer. Let her wonder. She found me in the kitchen, still sitting at the table with her phone positioned right next to my bourbon glass. Her face went through several expressions in quick succession. Confusion, recognition, fear, and finally resignation. How long have you known? She asked quietly. 3 months. I held up the phone. Want to explain this? She sank into the chair across from me, suddenly looking older than her 38 years. It's not what you think, really, because I think my wife has been screwing Derek Sloan while I've been working 60-hour weeks trying to keep our furniture business afloat. I think her best friend has been helping arrange these little encounters, and I think all 3 of you have been laughing at what a pathetic fool I am. We weren't laughing at you. No? Then what would you call it? I scrolled through the messages, finding one of my favorites. Here's a good one. Marina to Derek. Jack's so clueless. He actually thanked me for keeping Clara company during her late nights. You want to explain that one? Clara's composure finally cracked. Tears started running down her cheeks, ruining her carefully applied makeup. I never meant for it to happen. Derek and I, we just connected. He understands my work, my ambitions. He sees potential in me that I don't see. Clara, I've supported your career for 15 years. I moved here for your job. I gave up my writing to start a business that could support us both. What the hell more did you want? I wanted someone who believed in me. The words exploded out of her like she'd been holding them back for years. Not someone who settled for a quiet life in a small town. Derek has vision, Jack. He's going places. And you want to go with him? She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. I want a divorce. I'd been expecting those words, but they still hit like a physical blow. 15 years of marriage reduced to a simple sentence delivered across our kitchen table at half midnight. Fine, I said, but we do this my way. What does that mean? I stood up, pocketing her phone. It means you don't get to humiliate me and then walk away clean. It means Derek doesn't get to steal my wife and pretend he's some kind of gentleman. And it means Marina doesn't get to play innocent bystander while she helps destroy my marriage. Jack, please. Let's handle this like adults. Adults? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Adults don't sneak around behind their spouse's back. Adults don't lie and cheat and make their husband look like an idiot in front of the whole town. You want to act like children? Fine, but don't expect me to be the grown-up anymore. I headed for the stairs, leaving Clara sitting alone in the kitchen. Behind me, I heard her start to cry. Real tears this time, not the careful ones she'd used to try to manipulate me. In our bedroom, I pulled a suitcase from the closet and started packing. Not everything, just enough for a few weeks. I had plans to make and I couldn't do them from here. My phone buzzed with another text from Ed. "Whatever you're planning, call me first. Don't do anything stupid," I typed back. "Too late for that, but don't worry, I'm not planning anything criminal, just comprehensive." Ed Morrison's private investigation office occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian house on Brookfield's main street right above Murphy's Diner. The smell of bacon grease and coffee permanently saturated the building, which Ed claimed helped him think better. More likely, it just saved him from having to leave for lunch. "You look like hell," he said when I knocked on his door at 8 a.m. sharp. Ed was already dressed and caffeinated. Probably had been for hours. 20 years as a cop, followed by 10 years as a PI, had trained him to function on minimal sleep and maximum coffee. Feel worse. I dropped into the client chair across from his desk, noting how he'd positioned it to keep visitors slightly off balance. "Old habits. I need your help. Figured as much after your performance last night." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those sharp gray eyes that had intimidated plenty of suspects over the years. Half the town's talking about it. Other half's probably still asleep. Let them talk. I've got bigger problems. I filled him in on everything. Clara's affair, the second phone, the divorce demand. Ed listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he sat down his pen and shook his head. "Jack, I've known you for 12 years. You're not the revenge type. People change, do they? Or do they just finally show who they really were all along?" He stood up and walked to the window overlooking Main Street. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "I want everything. Financial records, phone logs, surveillance photos. I want to know every detail of Clara's relationship with Derek. Every lie Marina helped cover up. I want ammunition." "For what?" "For making sure they don't get to ride off into the sunset while I pick up the pieces." Ed turned back to me, his expression serious. "Jack, I can gather information. That's legal, and that's what I do. But if you're planning something that crosses the line, I'm not planning to hurt anyone. Not physically, anyway." "But they humiliated me, Ed. They made me look like a fool in front of everyone I know. Don't I deserve a little payback?" He considered this for a long moment. "What kind of payback?" "The kind that fits the crime. They want to destroy my reputation. Fine. Let's see how they like having theirs destroyed instead. That's a dangerous game. So is adultery." Ed sighed and returned to his desk. "All right, I'll help you. But we do this smart and we do this legal. No breaking and entering, no theft, no assault. Information gathering only. Agreed." "Agreed. Good. Now let's talk about what I've already found." He pulled out a manila folder thick with photographs and documents. "I've been keeping an eye on Derek Sloan for a while now. Not because of Clara. I didn't know about that until yesterday, but he's been involved in some questionable business deals, and a few of my clients have asked me to look into him." The first photograph showed Derek entering a downtown office building with a briefcase. The second showed him leaving the same building 2 hours later, briefcase gone. The third showed him having lunch with a man I didn't recognize. "That's Tony Castiano," Ed explained. "He runs a construction company that's been underbidding every major project in the county for the past 2 years. Word is they're cutting corners on materials and safety standards, but no one's been able to prove it." "What does that have to do with Derek?" Derek's been investing in their projects through a shell company. He provides the upfront capital. They split the profits. It's not illegal, but it's ethically questionable, especially since Derek sits on the town planning commission. I studied the photographs more carefully. You think he's using inside information to help Castellanos' bids? I think Derek Sloan is a lot less clean than he pretends to be. And if he's willing to bend the rules in business, he's probably willing to bend them in other areas too. Like stealing someone's wife, among other things. Ed pulled out another set of photos. These are from last week. Clara Ara and Derek at his lakeside house, visible through the large windows. Clara Ara and Derek's arms on his deck. Clara leaving the next morning, clearly wearing the same clothes from the night before. How long? I asked. Based on what I can document. About 6 weeks for the physical relationship, but they've been meeting regularly for almost 4 months. 4 months. While I'd been working late in my shop, crafting custom furniture pieces and trying to build something lasting, my wife had been planning her exit strategy. There's more, Ed said. Marina Walsh has been spreading stories about you around town. Nothing actionable, but she's been painting you as controlling and jealous, setting up the narrative for when Clara finally leaves. What kind of stories? That you've been monitoring Clara's phone calls, that you've been showing up at the gallery unexpectedly to check on her, that you've been drinking heavily and making threats. None of it was true, but I could see how it would play in a small town like Brookfield. By the time Clara filed for divorce, I'd already be cast as the unstable husband who drove his wife away. Smart, I admitted. Get ahead of the story. Control the narrative, very smart, which means your response needs to be smarter. Ed closed the folder. What did you have in mind? I told him about my plan. Not all of it, but enough to get him on board. His expression grew increasingly concerned as I talked, but he didn't interrupt. That's elaborate, he said when I finished. And risky, but doable. Doable? Yes. Advisable? That's another question. Ed, they're not just ending my marriage, they're trying to destroy my reputation so Clara can walk away looking like the victim. I can't let that happen. He nodded slowly. All right. But we do this my way, step by step, and if things start to go sideways, we pull back. Deal? Deal. We shook hands across his desk. Outside, Brookfield was waking up to another beautiful fall day, all golden leaves and crisp air. Inside, 2 middle-aged men were planning something that would either restore one man's dignity or destroy what was left of his life. I was betting everything on the former. Murphy's Diner occupied the kind of central position in Brookfield's social ecosystem that made it invaluable for intelligence gathering. Every morning, the same crowd gathered around the same tables, drinking coffee and dissecting the previous day's drama with surgical precision. I'd been avoiding Murphy's for months, partly because I'd been too busy with work, but mostly because I'd grown tired of the endless small-town gossip. Now that gossip was exactly what I needed. Jack Travers. Betty Murphy herself emerged from behind the counter as I walked in, her voice carrying across the entire diner. Haven't seen you in ages. How's Clara doing? Perfect. Exactly the opening I'd hoped for. Clara's doing great, Betty. Really great. In fact, she's been so busy with her new projects at the gallery I hardly see her anymore. I said it loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, with just enough emphasis on new projects to plant a seed of curiosity. Then I took a seat at the counter and ordered coffee and eggs, settling in for what I hoped would be an enlightening morning. It didn't take long. Within 10 minutes, Sarah Henderson from the Historical Society had moved to the stool next to mine. I heard there was some excitement at the fundraiser last night, she said, stirring her coffee with the kind of deliberate casualness that meant she was fishing for information. You could say that. I kept my voice neutral, letting her do the work. People are saying you and Clara had some kind of argument. Not an argument exactly, more like a clarification of our current situation. Oh dear. I hope everything's all right between you two. I turned to face her directly, making sure my expression conveyed just the right amount of wounded dignity. Sarah, can I ask you something? As a friend. Of course, if your husband was spending a lot of time with another woman for work supposedly, how would you handle it? Her eyes widened slightly. This was better than she'd hoped for. Oh, Jack, you don't think Clara would... I don't know what to think anymore. She's been working late almost every night, taking weekend meetings with gallery donors. Derek Sloan, in particular, seems to require a lot of her personal attention. I let that hang in the air for a moment, then shrugged as if I was trying to be fair-minded about an impossible situation. I'm probably just being paranoid. Marriage counselors always say that jealousy is more about the jealous person's insecurities than actual infidelity, right? Well, yes, but Sarah was practically vibrating with the need to share this information. Jack, I probably shouldn't say this, but I saw Clara and Derek having lunch together last Tuesday at that new place over in Camden. They looked very close. Close. How? Holding hands across the table, and when they left, he had his arm around her waist. I let my shoulders sag slightly as if this was confirmation of my worst fears. I was hoping I was wrong. Oh, honey. Sarah reached over and patted my arm. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I stood up and left money on the counter for my barely touched breakfast. Thanks for being honest with me, Sarah. Not everyone would have the courage. As I walked out, I could hear the excited murmur of conversation behind me. By noon, everyone in Brookfield would know that Jack Travers suspected his wife of cheating with Derek Sloan. By evening, they'd know that Sarah Henderson had personally witnessed Clara and Derek together. The narrative was shifting. My next stop was the hardware store, where I knew I'd find a different audience, but the same appetite for gossip. Tom Bradley, the owner, had known me since I'd started my furniture business. He was also Derek Sloan's second cousin, which made him perfect for my purposes. Jack heard you made quite an impression at the gallery last night. Tom looked up from the inventory sheet he'd been working on, his expression carefully neutral. Word travels fast in this town. You bet it does. Everything okay with you and Clara? Honestly, Tom, I don't know anymore. I picked up a hammer from the nearest display, testing its weight. Can I ask you something about Derek? Tom's expression grew wary. What about him? He's your cousin, so you probably know him better than most people. Is he the kind of man who'd go after another man's wife? Jack, I don't think, because Clara's been spending a lot of time with him lately. Gallery business, she says, but some of their meetings seem awfully personal for professional consultations. Tom sat down his inventory sheet. Look, Derek's always been a bit of a player. Even when we were kids, he had a way with women. But going after a married woman, that's not his usual style. What is his usual style? Divorced women mostly. Wealthy widows, women who can afford to be generous with men who show them attention. Tom paused, choosing his words carefully. Derek likes the finer things in life, and he's not too particular about how he gets them. Meaning he's got expensive tastes and a flexible moral code. But Clara's not wealthy and she's not divorced. So if he's pursuing her, it's probably for reasons that have nothing to do with money. Unless Clara had something else Derek wanted, like inside information about the gallery's operations, or access to the town's social elite, or simply the thrill of taking something that belonged to someone else. Thanks for being straight with me, Tom. Jack, whatever's going on between you and Clara, don't do anything stupid. Derek's got connections in this town, important connections. So do I said, though we both knew that wasn't really true. My final stop was the post office, where Agnes Porter had been working for 30 years and collecting information about everyone in town for even longer. Agnes was a gossip, but she was also discreet about it. She never spread rumors maliciously, just shared information with people she thought needed to know. "Jack Travers," she said when I walked up to her window. "I was wondering when you'd come by." "Why is that?" "Because I've been holding some mail for Clara that I thought you should know about." She reached under her counter and pulled out a small stack of envelopes. All of them were addressed to Clara at a post office box I didn't know she had. "She rented the box 3 months ago," Agnes explained. "Said she needed it for gallery business, but the mail she gets here isn't business-related." I looked at the return addresses, credit card companies, a bank I'd never heard of, and several letters with no return address at all. "Agnes, I appreciate you telling me this, but I can't take Clara's mail. That's federal. I'm not asking you to take it. I'm just letting you know it exists. What you do with that information is up to you." I nodded, understanding. Agnes had just told me that my wife had been conducting financial business behind my back for 3 months, the same length of time she'd been involved with Derek Sloan. "Thanks, Agnes. I owe you one." "No, you don't. Just take care of yourself, Jack, and be careful who you trust." As I walked back to my truck, I felt the first real surge of optimism I'd experienced in months. The morning had gone better than I'd hoped. Seeds planted, information gathered, alliances formed. Phase 1 was complete. Now it was time for Phase 2. The Brookfield Bar and Grill occupied a converted warehouse on the outskirts of town. The kind of place where locals went to drink beer and complain about their lives without worrying about maintaining appearances. I'd been a regular there for years, back when I still had friends who wanted to spend time with me. Those friends were sitting at our usual table when I walked in Thursday night. Mike Chen, who ran the auto repair shop, Steve Rodriguez, who taught high school history, and Danny Walsh, Marina's husband and my former best friend. They looked up when they saw me, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable to openly hostile. "Jack," Danny said, his voice flat. "Didn't expect to see you here." Didn't expect to be here. I pulled out the empty chair and sat down without being invited. "But I figured we should clear the air." "Nothing to clear," Mike said. "We heard what happened at the gallery. We heard what you've been saying around town. We get it. You're pissed at Clara." Am I? Or am I pissed at the people who helped her lie to me for months? The table went quiet around us. The usual crowd of drinkers and pool players continued their conversations, but I could feel attention shifting in our direction. "Nobody helped Clara do anything," Steve said. "If she was cheating on you, and I'm not saying she was, that's between you and her." "Is it?" "Because Marina seems to know an awful lot about Clara's schedule, and you guys seem to know an awful lot about my supposed jealousy and drinking problems." Di's face flushed red. "Marina never said anything about what? About covering for Clara while she screwed Derek Sloan. About spreading stories around town to make me look like the bad guy. About helping my wife plan her exit strategy while pretending to be my friend." "You're out of line," Mike said, standing up. "Marina's not part of whatever problems you and Clara are having. Sit down, Mike." My voice was calm, but something in my tone made him hesitate. "We're just talking here like old friends." "We're not friends anymore," Danny said, "not after the way you've been acting. Marina came home crying yesterday because of the things you've been saying about her around town." "What things?" "That she's been helping Clara cheat, that she's been lying to me about where Clara's been spending her time, that she's been gossiping about your marriage." "And are those things true?" Danny's silence was answer enough. I reached into my jacket and pulled out Clara's second phone, setting it on the table between us. "Want to see the evidence? You can't just take someone's phone. Steve said that's illegal. It's my wife's phone, and she left it at our house. Technically, that makes it community property." I unlocked the screen and found the message thread between Clara and Marina. "Want to hear some highlights?" Before anyone could stop me, I started reading aloud. Marina to Clara. Danny's working late tonight. Perfect time for you and Derek to use our place. Clara to Marina, thanks. Jack thinks I'm at book club. Marina to Clara. Your husband's so clueless. This is almost too easy. Danny's face went white. That's not Marina wouldn't. There's more. Lots more. 3 months of messages, Danny. 3 months of your wife helping my wife cheat on me while we all sat around this table pretending to be friends. I scrolled to another message. Here's a good one. Marina to Derek. Jack's getting suspicious. We need to be more careful. Derek to Marina. Don't worry about Jack. He's too weak to do anything about it. Mike sat back down heavily. Jesus, Jack, I had no idea. None of you had any idea, but you were all happy to believe that I was the problem, that I was jealous and controlling and driving Clara away. I put the phone back in my pocket. Well, here's the truth. My wife has been cheating on me for months. Your wives have been helping her do it, and all of you have been treating me like I was crazy for noticing. The silence stretched out uncomfortably. Finally, Steve spoke up. What do you want from us, Jack? I want you to stop spreading Marina's lies about me. I want you to acknowledge that I'm not the villain in this situation, and I want you to stay out of my way while I handle this. Handle it? How? Danny asked. However I see fit. Danny stood up abruptly, knocking over his beer. If you do anything to hurt Marina, I'm not going to hurt Marina. I'm not going to hurt anyone. But I'm also not going to let them destroy my reputation while they ride off into the sunset together. Jack, maybe you should just let it go, Mike said quietly. Get divorced. Move on. Find someone better. Would you let it go? If someone made you look like a fool in front of the whole town? If your friends chose your wife's lies over your friendship, none of them answered. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. That's what I thought. Enjoy your evening, gentlemen, and give my regards to your wives. As I walked toward the door, I heard Danny call out behind me. Jack, this isn't over. I turned back to face him. You're right. It's not. The parking lot was dark and mostly empty. I was halfway to my truck when I heard footsteps behind me. Danny appeared out of the shadows, his face twisted with anger. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're pissed off. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just revealing what was already there. Marina made a mistake. She was trying to help a friend. She was trying to help Clara cheat on me. There's a difference. Danny took a step closer, his hands clenched into fists. If you don't back off, I'm going to make you back off. Are you threatening me, Danny? I'm warning you. I looked at my former best friend, really looked at him. Danny Walsh, who'd been my groomsman at my wedding, who'd helped me move into 3 different apartments and 2 houses, who'd spent countless evenings at this very bar complaining about work and wives and the general unfairness of life. Here's the thing, Danny, I said quietly. I used to care what you thought. I used to value your friendship. But that was when I thought you were actually my friend. Now I know better, Jack. Now I know that when it came down to choosing sides, you chose your wife over the truth. You chose Marina's lies over 15 years of friendship. So whatever happens next, remember that you made that choice. I turned and walked away, leaving Danny standing alone in the parking lot. Behind me, I heard him call my name one more time, but I didn't look back. The confrontation had gone exactly as I'd hoped. Now everyone would know that I had evidence of the conspiracy against me. They'd know that I wasn't going to go quietly. And most importantly, they'd know that I was done being the victim in this story. Phase 3 was about to begin. The abandoned train depot sat on the outskirts of Brookfield like a monument to better times when the town had been a stop on the coastal railway, and prosperity had seemed as permanent as the granite foundations beneath the station platform. Now it was just another relic, surrounded by overgrown weeds and rusted tracks that led nowhere. It was also the perfect place for a final confrontation. Ed Morrison's surveillance had been thorough and professional. For 2 weeks, he documented every meeting between Clara and Derek, every lie Marina had told to cover for them, every move they'd made in their careful campaign to destroy my reputation while building their own future together. The evidence was overwhelming. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, photographs, phone records, everything needed to prove that my wife had been systematically betraying me while painting me as an unstable husband who'd driven her away. But evidence wasn't enough. Not for what I had planned. "You sure about this?" Ed asked as we sat in his car watching the depot from across the empty parking lot. "Once you do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure, Jack. I've seen a lot of people go down this road. The need for revenge, for justice, for evening the score. It never ends the way they think it will. Maybe not, but doing nothing definitely won't end the way I want it to." Ed sighed and handed me the radio transmitter. "Channel 7, I'll be listening from the car. If things go sideways, I'm calling the police. They won't go sideways. I'm not planning to hurt anyone." That's what they all say. I got out of the car and walked toward the depot, my footsteps echoing in the quiet evening air. Clara's car was already there, parked next to Derek's BMW in the shadow of the old building. They'd received my message, a simple text from Clara's second phone asking them to meet me here to discuss terms. They were waiting inside the depot's main hall, standing close together near the boarded-up ticket windows. Clara looked nervous but defiant. Derek looked annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. "Jack," Clara said as I walked in, "thank you for agreeing to handle this like adults." "Adults?" I repeated. Interesting choice of words. Derek stepped forward, putting himself between Clara and me in a gesture that was probably meant to look protective. "Let's keep this civil, Jack. We all want the same thing here, do we?" "What is it you think I want, Derek?" "A clean divorce, a fair settlement, a chance to move on with your life. And what do you want?" Derek glanced at Clara, then back at me. "I want Clara to be happy. I want to build a life with her without unnecessary drama or complications. Complications like a husband who knows the truth about your affair." "It's not an affair," Clara said. "It's a relationship, a real relationship based on mutual respect and shared goals. Unlike our marriage has been over for years, Jack. We both know it. I just had the courage to do something about it." I pulled out her second phone and held it up so they could both see it. "Is this what you call courage? Sneaking around behind my back, using Marina to provide alibis, spreading lies about me around town?" Derek's expression hardened. "You went through Clara's private communications. I went through my wife's communications. There's a legal difference. There's also a moral difference between privacy and secrecy." Clara said, "I had that phone because I needed space to figure out what I wanted without you monitoring my every move. I never monitored anything. I never even suspected anything until I found this phone by accident, which, by the way, contains some fascinating reading." I scrolled to one of my favorite message threads and began reading aloud. "Clara to Marina. Jack's so pathetic, he actually thanked Derek for taking such a personal interest in the gallery. Derek to Clara. Poor guy has no idea what's coming, Marina to both. This is almost too easy. He trusts everyone." Clara's face flushed red. Those messages were taken out of context. Were they? How about this one? Derek to Clara. "Once Jack signs the papers, Ed, we'll have everything we need to start over. Your husband's about to finance his own replacement." Derek went very still. "What papers?" I smiled and pulled out a manila folder Ed had prepared. "These papers? The loan applications you helped Clara fill out using our house as collateral. The business partnership agreements that would give you control of my workshop and client list. The power of attorney documents that would let Clara make financial decisions without my knowledge. Those were just preliminary documents, Clara said quickly. We never filed anything. No, but you were planning to as soon as you'd finished destroying my reputation and establishing grounds for divorce. I opened the folder and spread the papers across a dusty bench. It's actually quite clever. Make me look like an unstable, controlling husband, then use my supposed instability to justify taking control of our assets. Derek stepped forward, his composure finally cracking. You don't understand the situation, Jack. Clara needs protection from your increasingly erratic behavior. Erratic behavior like what? Like noticing that my wife was cheating on me. Like questioning why she was working late every night. Like wondering why her best friend knew more about her schedule than I did. Like stalking her. Like going through her private communications. Like making threats against the people she cares about. I never made any threats. You threatened me at the bar last week. I warned you to stay out of my way. That's not a threat, it's advice. Clara moved to Derek's side, taking his arm in a gesture of solidarity. Jack, this has gone far enough. We're prepared to offer you a generous settlement. You can keep the workshop, the truck, and half the savings. All you have to do is agree to an uncontested divorce and stop harassing us, harassing you, following us, questioning our friends, spreading rumors about our relationship. I haven't spread any rumors. I've shared facts. There's a difference. Derek pulled out his phone. Maybe we should call the police. Let them sort this out. Go ahead, I said. Call them. I'd love to explain to Officer Patterson how my wife and her boyfriend tried to defraud me out of my house and business while conducting an affair that half the town knows about. It's not fraud if we're married. Clara said it is if you're using forged signatures and falsified documents. I pointed to one of the papers in the folder. This power of attorney, for instance, the signature doesn't match any of the samples Ed collected from my actual legal documents, which means either I signed it while suffering from a neurological condition, or someone else signed it for me. Clara went pale. I never forged anything. Maybe not. But someone did. And since you're the only one who benefits from these documents, you're the obvious suspect. Derek grabbed Clara's arm. We're leaving. This conversation is over. Actually, it's not. I pulled out the radio transmitter Ed had given me. Ed, they're trying to leave. Ed's voice crackled through the speaker. Copy that. Police are on their way. You called the cops. Derek's voice rose in panic. I called them an hour ago, told them I had evidence of attempted fraud and wanted to file a formal complaint. They're very interested in examining these documents. Clara sank onto the bench, her face buried in her hands. Jack, please, we can work this out. Can we? The same way you worked out our marriage with lies and betrayal and careful planning behind my back. I never meant for it to happen this way. Yes, you did. This was always the plan. Make me look crazy. Take control of our assets, then ride off into the sunset with Derek while I picked up the pieces. Derek was pacing now, his expensive shoes clicking on the concrete floor. This is insane. You can't prove any of this, can I? Ed's been documenting your relationship for weeks. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, photographs of you two together, plus all the messages on Clara's phone, including the ones where you discuss strategy for handling me. Those messages were private communications between consenting adults. Those messages were evidence of a conspiracy to defraud me. Big difference. The sound of sirens grew louder as police cars pulled into the parking lot. Through the depot's broken windows, I could see red and blue lights flashing against the evening sky. Jack, Clara said quietly, what do you want? Really? I looked at my wife of 15 years, this woman I'd loved and trusted and built a life with. She looked smaller now, less confident, nothing like the powerful gallery director who'd been planning my destruction just an hour earlier. I want everyone to know the truth, I said. I want them to know that I wasn't crazy or jealous or controlling. I want them to know that you and Derek and Marina conspired to destroy my reputation while you stole my life, and I want you to face the consequences of your choices. The police entered the depot with Ed close behind them. Officer Patterson, whom I'd known since high school, looked around the scene with professional interest. "Evening, Jack. We got your call about suspected fraud." "That's right." I handed him the folder of documents. "These papers were supposedly signed by me, but the signatures are forged. My wife and her boyfriend were planning to use them to take control of my assets." Patterson examined the papers while his partner took statements from Clara and Derek. The whole process took about an hour, during which Clara cried, Derek threatened lawsuits, and I answered questions with calm precision. In the end, no arrests were made. The evidence was strong, but not quite strong enough for criminal charges. But that was fine. I hadn't expected arrests. I'd expected exactly what happened next. By morning, everyone in Brookfield knew that Clara Travers and Derek Sloan had been caught in an elaborate scheme to defraud Clara's husband. They knew that the police had been called, that evidence had been collected, that the whole sordid story was now part of the public record. Clara's reputation as a respected gallery director was destroyed. Derek's standing in the business community was ruined. Marina, as their accomplice, became a social pariah overnight. And me? I became the wronged husband who'd fought back, who'd refused to be victimized, who'd exposed the truth despite overwhelming odds. 3 days later, Clara moved out of our house. A week after that, Derek left town, claiming he'd received a job offer in Boston that was too good to refuse. Marina and Di's marriage fell apart when Danny learned the full extent of his wife's involvement in the affair. I kept the house, the workshop, and most of our savings. The divorce was finalized within 6 months, with Clara agreeing to a settlement that left her with almost nothing. But the best part, the part that made all the planning and risk worthwhile, everyone in Brookfield knew exactly who the real villains had been. And everyone knew that Jack Travers wasn't the kind of man who could be pushed around, lied to, or made a fool of. I was free, they were finished, and justice for once had been served exactly as it should be.